Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today let's make a gravity ice dye. This one is going to be kind of a twist spiral design. I'm starting with the shirt turned inside out and laying flat on my table, and I'm going to grab one of the bottom corners of the shirt, lift it up off the table, and just begin to twist it. Once I have the shirt twisted, I'm going to begin down at the same end where I started the twist, and I'm going to coil the shirt or spiral it in on itself, kind of like a cinnamon roll. As I'm doing the coiling or spiraling, I'm keeping my twist as tight as I can keep it. So initially I thought it would probably be easier to hold this fold in place with some kite string, but I didn't have great success with that. So I ended up just using some rubber bands to hold the fold together. That one little area right where I began the spiral or the coil, that part wants to keep popping up. So I just keep kind of pushing it back down in place. If you'll notice, I didn't coil the entire shirt because I want to leave part of the shirt hanging down. That's the part that I'm going to actually gravity dye. After getting the rubber bands on the shirt, I placed it aside for just a little while to tie a few more shirts. So it wasn't completely dry, but it wasn't super damp either by the time I started to apply the dye. For this shirt, I've chosen some dye spin colors. I've got a more blue purple, a more red purple, and then a blue color. For the gravity dye part, I've taken the shirt and placed it out on top of a metal rack, which I have outside underneath the trees. I've left the part of the shirt that I didn't tie hanging over the side of the rack, and that's the part that I'm going to gravity dye. So the intended purpose with this is to apply the dye and to apply the ice and allow the dye to be pulled down through the gravity dye portion of the shirt. So when I apply the dye, I'm going to apply quite a bit of dye on each of the areas. I'm starting with Scottish Heather, and I'm adding a pretty good layer because what I'd like to do is I'd like to just continue to add ice until the dye has gone all the way to the outer edges of the fabric. I don't really want to have to apply more dye unless it's absolutely necessary. So next to the Scottish Heather, I'm going to use Evensong. Like I said, these are all dye spin colors. Then beside the Evensong, I'm going to use Vintage Purple. And I'm not going to take the color down beyond the portion of the shirt that I actually twisted and then coiled up and held in place with some rubber bands. I'm going to let gravity take care of that part of the shirt. So after I have the dye on the shirt, I'm going to place another small sprinkling of soda ash over the top, just because I am going to add quite a bit of ice on top of the shirt, and I want to make sure I don't rinse out all the initial soda ash that I had in the shirt from my soda ash soak. This dye needs to have that raised pH to bond properly with the fabric. Then over the top, I'm going to place a pretty large chunk of ice, which I made in an old Cool Whip container. In the portion of the shirt that's hanging down below, I'm going to spray that with a soda ash solution just to kind of help promote the dye flowing down that area. I'm going to come back and add one more little square of ice on the portion of the shirt that has dye but no ice. Then I'm going to just leave the shirt alone and allow the ice to melt. And it's pretty hot today, so the ice will melt fairly quickly. As far as how many layers of ice I place on the shirt, that just kind of depends. Like I said, the object of doing a gravity dye for me is to have the dye color move all the way down to the outer edges of the fabric. So since I added quite a bit of dye to the top and I added a little additional soda ash, I'm going to continue adding ice until I get the ice to melt and the dye to flow all the way to those outer edges. So sometimes it just takes a couple layers, sometimes it takes more than that. And of course, this is a pretty thick fold, so it's going to take several layers of ice to get the dye to move all the way down the shirt. I've included some photos of what the shirt looked like as the ice melted and the dye moved down through the shirt. Once the dye was all the way down to the edges and I was happy with the shirt, I took this shirt and placed it down inside of a plastic tote that has a metal rack down in the bottom. I put the lid on the tote and I went ahead and left it outside to process in the heat. After about 36 hours out in the heat, I went ahead and rinsed the shirt. To do that, I took it to my utility sink and I began rinsing it in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. Then I warmed the water up to hot and I continued rinsing in hot water to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. I also untied or took off the rubber bands from the shirt. Then I decided to go ahead and just soak the shirt. So I ran some really hot water in my utility sink, added some Blue Dawn dish soap to the water, placed the shirt inside, and I allowed it to soak. When the water cooled off, I changed it out and I continued that soaking process until my water was remaining almost clear. Then I placed the shirt along with some Dharma's Professional Textile Detergent into my washing machine and I washed it using a hot water cycle. Okay, so the shirt has been washed, dried, and ironed, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? I think this one is really pretty. I really like this design. And I'm not sure if I've ever done this like this before. I mean, I have actually fan folded starting from the corner and then spiraled or coiled it. And it's kind of the same, not quite as freeform and loose. It's a little more defined. But I think this is a fun design to do with gravity dyeing. I love the way the dye just flows in a gravity dye. That is my favorite part about gravity dyeing. And I think the shirt looks really pretty. I mean, I think it's interesting to look at. The vintage purple is the more blue purple, and in that color, I'm getting a little bit of a gray that comes out of that or splits out of that color. The Scottish heather is the more red purple, which I'm getting, some more intense reddish purple colors and then more mild purple. I think that's also where I'm getting that lighter swath of color, kind of right toward the middle portion of the shirt. And then the Evensong is what's giving me more of the blue tones. That's where the turquoise color is coming from. And I think those three combined are really pretty together. I think they're very pleasing to look at. I like that swath of blue, how it's kind of going through the neck portion of the shirt. I think that's pretty cool. So overall, I really love this shirt. I think it turned out really pretty and I'm very happy with it. But what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it and if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.